Every month for 3 years, she paid rent into an account. Every month for 3 years, a man collected that envelope downstairs. She had no idea whose building she was living in. He had no idea his daughter was the one paying. Until one day, he decided to come himself and knocked on her door. What happened when she opened that door will stay with you for a very long time. This is that story. Stay with me. The apartment on Admiralty Way, Lekki Phase 1, was everything Adaze had promised herself the night she left her father's 2-room house in Onitsha, with one Ghana must-go bag and a silence so heavy it had its own weight. Cream walls, marble floors, a wardrobe that needed 2 sliding doors just to hold everything inside. A kitchen where every appliance matched and the refrigerator hummed like a man with no worries. She had chosen every single item herself, not because nobody offered to help, but because nobody was allowed close enough to help. Adaze Nkonkwo had written the story of her own life, and she had written it without a village, without a leaking roof, without a father who came to her office and announced himself in a voice too large for the reception area. She was 31, senior marketing executive at one of the biggest FMCG companies on Lagos Island. Her colleagues called her sharp. Her oga called her the best thing that had happened to that department. Her boyfriend Emeka called her his future. None of them knew where she came from. None of them knew that 3 years ago, on a rainy afternoon at Ojota Motor Park, she had driven away from her own father and not once checked the mirror. She was good at erasure. It was the first skill poverty had taught her and the one she had perfected most completely. It did not start as a plan. That is the thing about shame. You know, the book appointment before it come. It just land inside your life and begin to scatter everything where you carefully arrange. Her colleague Tunde had been driving. 4 of them were returning from a site inspection on the mainland, and she had asked him to make a brief stop at Ojota because her father called saying he was stranded. She told them it would be 2 minutes. She believed it herself. But when Papa emerged from the crowd, his agbada faded to a collar that had no name, his sandals separating at the left sole, his voice carrying across the noise of the park like a man who had not learned that some situations required quietness. Adaze, my daughter, God bless you, my dear, I don't dey wait since morning. Something inside her chest turned to cold stone and stayed there. Tunde and the others turned to look. They smiled with their mouths, but their eyes were doing something else entirely. Papa reached the window. He smelled of a long journey and honest sweat. He tried to lean in to greet her properly, the way he always greeted her, with both hands and a full smile that showed the gap in his lower teeth. Papa, not now, she said quietly. She pressed 2,000 naira into her palm through the gap in the window. Take Okada go Aunty Ngozi place. I go call you. But Adaze, Papa, please, I go call you. She did not call him. Not that night, not the week after. She changed her number 2 months later and told herself it was because of a stalker from work. She blocked him on the one platform he had learned to use. She told Emeka she had no living relatives. She told it so many times it began to feel like the truth. And the truth as she understood it was whatever you repeated long enough without flinching. 3 years is enough time to build a very convincing life. She moved from Surulere to Lekki. She got promoted twice. She attended weddings and birthdays and work retreats and smiled in photographs that had nothing behind them except the effort of a woman who had decided that feelings were a luxury she could not afford. Emeka was good to her. He was a civil engineer with a calm voice and a mother in Enugu who had not yet decided whether to like her. He did not ask too many questions about her past because she had constructed her silences around that topic so skillfully that people naturally stopped approaching it. She had learnt that if you carry yourself like someone whose history is unremarkable, people will believe you. She had one habit she could not break. Every December, she sent an anonymous bank transfer of 50,000 naira to her auntie Ngozi in Onitsha with a note that said only, "For the old man if he needs anything."
She never signed it, she never followed up. It was the one concession she made to the guilt that lived permanently in the corner of her chest like an uninvited tenant she had decided to simply stop acknowledging. God, however, had made no such decision. The property management company that took over her building sent a letter in January. New ownership, new payment structure, rent to be paid directly to the management office or to the designated representative who would visit monthly. Standard procedure. She read it over her morning coffee, noted the new account details, and moved on with her day. The first representative who came was a young man in a blue polo shirt, polite, efficient. She gave him the envelope and signed the receipt, and that was the end of it. The second month, the young man sent a message saying the senior manager would be handling her estate personally from that point. She did not think anything of it. The morning the knock came, she had just finished a conference call. Her hair was wrapped, her feet bare on the cold marble. She assumed it was the cleaner who came on Thursdays. She opened the door, the way you open a door when you are expecting nobody of consequence, one hand on the frame, body half turned back toward the room, mind already elsewhere. "Good morning, ma. I come collect this month's rent." The voice.
She turned fully. The clipboard slipped from her fingers before her mind had finished processing what her eyes were already reporting. It hit the marble with a sound that seemed too loud for the size of the moment, though the moment was in fact enormous. The man at her door was old in the way that hard life makes a person old, not just in years, but in the particular stillness of someone who has survived things they did not expect to survive. His kaftan was clean and pressed, old but dignified. His sandals were new. His hands, wrapped around a worn leather folder, were the same hands that had plaited her hair every Sunday morning before church when she was small. "Papa?" She looked at him with eyes that had already accepted everything they were seeing, as in hers were still refusing. "Adaeze." Her hand found the door frame. Her knees were doing something she had no instructions for. "Papa, how you come dey here? Which kind?" She stopped. She tried again. "What are you? This building na? I don dey rent here 3 years now. This na?" He opened the folder, slowly, the way a man moves when he has waited long enough that rushing no longer means anything. He removed a single document and held it toward her. His hand did not shake. She took it. Her eyes moved across the page and stopped at the name. Chukwuemeka Okonkwo, sole proprietor, Okonkwo Property Holdings. Now my building be this. I be your landlord 3 years now. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of every phone call she had not made, every December transfer she had sent without a name, every morning she had woken up in his building and eaten breakfast in his kitchen and slept under his roof without knowing, while he came every month and stood outside and collected her envelope from a young man and went back to wherever he had built himself without her. She slid down the door frame, not dramatically, simply, the way a structure slides when the thing holding it up is suddenly removed. He did not move toward her. He stood at the door of his own building and watched his daughter fold at his feet, and he let the tears come down his face without wiping them because there was no performance left in either of them. "Papa, I'm sorry. Papa, I'm so sorry." He was quiet for a long time. Then he stepped inside, into his own building, into the home he had been funding in silence, and sat down in the chair across from where she was still on the floor. He placed his folder on the table. He looked at his hands. "When you leave me for that pack, I no cry. You know why? Because I know say na me fail you first. I make you the shame of where we come from. That na my own sin." She looked up at him. "But I tell myself say I go find a way to still provide for you, even if you no know say na me. Even if you no ever say thank you. Even if you never know." He looked at her then, because na so Papa love work. You no need you to see am before he do am. He told her the story slowly, the way you tell something that cost you everything.
After she drove away from Ojata, he had walked back to the park and sat on a bench until it was dark. Then he had gone to Auntie Ngozi's house in Onitsha and stayed 1 week. Then he had gone back to what remained of the family plot in Oguta and he had begun to think. He had a small piece of land he had never touched. Land her late mother had left. Land Adaize did not know existed because he had never mentioned it. Land he had been sitting on for 20 years, waiting for a reason. She had given him a reason. He sold a portion, borrowed carefully from a cooperative society he had belonged to for 15 years, and with the combination, he had acquired the building in Lekki. It had not been a famous price. The previous owner had needed a fast sale. Papa arrived with cash and a patience that had no deadline. The deal closed in 6 weeks. He did not know when he bought it that she lived there. He found out 4 months into ownership when the management team gave him the tenant list and he saw a name he had given to a child in a hospital in Onitsha 31 years ago. He had sat with that information for 2 months before deciding to come himself. I think about him well, whether to just transfer the property to your name and disappear, whether to call you, whether to come like this. He paused. In the end, I decide say, make I come knock. Whatever happened after that, na God go handle. Adaize was no longer on the floor. She had moved to the sofa at some point and she was sitting with her knees pulled to her chest like she was 19 again and the world had just shown her how large it was. Why you no just sign am over? Why you come yourself? He smiled. It was the gap-toothed smile, the one she had spent 3 years trying to forget and apparently failed completely. Because property na property, but daughter na daughter. I no come for the building. Building na just excuse. She made him tea. It was the only thing she could think to do with her hands. She made it the way he had always taken it. Strong, no milk, 2 cubes of sugar. And she did not ask him how he took it because some things the body remembers, even when the mind has been trying its hardest to forget. He stayed 3 hours. They did not solve everything. 3 years of silence is not a wound that closes in a morning. But they talked, really talked, about her mother who had died when she was 11, about the shame that poverty plants in a child's chest like a seed nobody asked to carry, about the night she left Onitsha and what they had both been too proud and too broken to say to each other. When he stood to leave, she followed him to the door and stood in the frame the same way she had stood an hour before, except that everything was different now, in the way that everything is different when the truth has finally been allowed into the room. Papa, her voice caught. The 50,000 every December, that was me. He nodded slowly. I know. How you know? Because now only you know say I like to give to the motherless babies home for Christmas. He looked at her steadily. The transfer note every year say, for the old man and the children he loves. Now only my own pikin go write that one. She pressed both hands over her mouth. He touched her face once. One hand, briefly, the way you touch something you thought was lost. Lock your door well, oh, he said. And he walked down the corridor toward the elevator with his old folder under his arm and his new sandals quiet on the tile. Adaize stood at the door of her Lekki apartment, his Lekki apartment, the home he had built for her without her knowing, and she watched him go. And for the first time in 3 years, she did not look away. That morning, Adaize learned that a father's love does not need a forwarding address. It will find you. It will buy the building you are hiding in. It will knock quietly and wait. And when you finally open the door, it will not ask you where you have been. It will only ask if you have eaten. If this story touched something inside you, drop a home in the comments right now. And if you have a parent you have been putting off calling, this is your sign. Pick up that phone today, not tomorrow, today. If this story reached your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose relationship it will save. Follow the Gracious Voice for more stories that remind us who we really are, before the money, before the title, before the forgetting. Because the people who loved you when you had nothing, they are still the most important people in your story. Like, share, subscribe, and never let shame steal your people from you. The Gracious Voice.